Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked, and sorry for being missing us. Well, we've been on a bit of a summer break. Tarek's still having a bit of a rest.
Yeah, Tarek is in Portugal, so we have Graham Dunbar, friend of the pod, been on a few times before, and glad to have him with us again.
Yes, joining Martyn Ziegler from The Times and myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. And always great if you can hit subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to us on, and we're there for free. So, Champions League draw week, the season's beginning, and quite a change to the Champions League next season.
Yeah, this is the news from UEFA that the kick-off time at the Men's Champions League final from now on will be at 6 p.m. Central European, 3 hours earlier than it has been, in consultation with fan groups, the Football Supporters Europe, saying, well, public transport to and especially away from the match, allowing fans some party time after the game, and I think popular with media as well, given we can remember Champions League finals where if it goes to extra time, penalties, a long wait for the players after a game, you're not leaving the stadium till 2-3 in the morning. So I think this is probably a winning decision.
I'm fully behind that. I remember going to the Champions League final in Berlin in 2015, I think it was, and it was hell getting out of the stadium and getting back into town. I think it got back to my hotel room at about 4 in the morning. It was a nightmare.
I remember bumping into one of our podcast listeners from one of the football associations as well on the platform, trying to get away from the stadium. It was quite a struggle. Is this about the media and fans purely, or I bet a lot of the sponsors have thought we want to continue this party after the game as well, rather than getting back at sort of midnight, 1 a.m. into the centre? It means they're done far earlier, even have a dinner later on as well.
Yeah, I think sponsors maybe have more influence on where and when games and competitions play than we know. Probably why the World Cup final will be played in near New York City next year and not in Dallas or elsewhere.
And there's been quite a focus on the United States about where games are being played. Originally, UEFA were looking at a Champions League final potentially outside of Europe. Certainly when Alexander Shefrin, the UEFA president, gave his first long interview as president to myself and Graham back in AP days in 2016, he floated the idea. But it's not UEFA looking overseas at the moment. It's La Liga and Serie A, and it's gone down particularly badly as they try to take their matches outside their territories.
Yeah, no, not surprisingly, it's been hugely controversial. Real Madrid have come out very strongly against it. Fan groups have. I mean, I think that the legal challenge that Relevant, the agency, brought against FIFA means that it's quite difficult to stop legally. But from what we know, I think UEFA are going to get in touch with FIFA and seeing if there's anything they can do to try and restrict the number of these domestic matches going.
So who exactly are Relevant? Because they're in multiple camps, aren't they?
Yeah, they're a sort of marketing agency effectively, and they've taken over from Team Marketing as the UEFA's effectively agency who have the rights to sell their club competitions, so for TV purposes. So they're now sort of hand in glove with UEFA. So it's an interesting position, given that what UEFA thinks about playing matches abroad and that they're sort of opposition to it, to the fact that Relevant think that it's something they want to pursue. I mean, from what my understanding is, Relevant say that these would only be very, very few and far between these games.
There was an interesting contribution to this debate on Wednesday from the European Commissioner in Brussels, who has the portfolio for sports issues. He came out very clearly that games in European competitions should be played in Europe. He said moving competitions abroad isn't innovation, it's betrayal. And this is the Commissioner Glenn Mikulev from Malta. Why that's especially interesting is because the European Commission in Brussels is handling a formal complaint by the European Players Union, European Division of the Players Union, and the European Leagues against FIFA's governance and scheduling of the Club World Cup. Now, that was a very narrowly focused complaint about FIFA, but here the European Commissioner Mikulev seems to be saying, well, he's interested in perhaps more than that, saying this is the first big stress test for governance since the Super League.
I mean, it's interesting they're getting involved, isn't it? For sure. Robbie, you and I, we spoke to Richard Masters, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, the Premier League chief executive, about whether there was any interest in pursuing this, going back to the old 39th game proposal that was made back in 2008. He said there was no talks about it at all. Do you think there's any chance at all, or would fans just sort of rise an uproar and no clubs are going to be brave enough to take that on?
Well, he said there's currently nothing on the table, which doesn't mean that it won't come to the table at a Premier League meeting, because the way Richard Masters was talking about it reinforced how he has little say over it, because if 14 clubs come and propose it, the Premier League then have an obligation to take it forward. Then it could come up against political opposition and the intervention of the regulator, and Masters was very cautious not to sort of say it's a good thing that the regulator could intervene to help, because if the clubs back it and he was then seen as opposing it on the back of the regulator, it would weaken his own position, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's true. It's a sort of sensitive situation. I mean, I can't see it. You're right. It would be a sort of political opportunity. You'll be MPs lining up to slag it off. And we saw with the Super League, fan power. And I think they would just kill it as far as English football is concerned. But what about? Can you see Italian, Spanish fans agreeing to this?
Well, the way they're portraying it is a need to grow the game globally. Something Richard Masters said was the Premier League doesn't really need to take games abroad now because there's such growth in the TV rights internationally and they're holding up well. That's certainly not the case for other countries. Now, we saw this very recently with Bundesliga and their UK and Ireland TV rights, previously held exclusively by Sky Sports. Now there's seemingly less appetite for these European rights. There's so many Premier League and EFL games on air in the UK, and it means the Bundesliga have been struggling to sell their TV rights. So we saw their Friday night package in particular having to be now given out to streamers. So the Bundesliga Friday night games in the UK, one of them is being shown on The Overlap, which is part owned by Gary Neville, also being shown on That's Football, which is run by the content creator YouTuber Mark Goldbridge, being given away for free, he told me. So that's showing why these leagues are having to think more imaginatively to perhaps raise revenue, because they can't even sell these Friday night games in the UK.
I think Serie A has been a little bit cheeky, saying they've been presented with a special circumstance in that the Winter Olympics is being held in Milan next February. And of course, San Siro, which is where the opening ceremony will be on the Friday, every weekend is home to an AC Milan or an Inter Milan game. So they say, well, on the Sunday, 2 days after, less than 48 hours after the opening ceremony, AC Milan are due to host Como on the fixture schedule. Well, we can't do that. So let's go to Australia, Perth, Australia, a big Italian diaspora, just a very specific circumstance for one game. Well, the Winter Olympics won't be coming back to Italy in 20 years or even again in our lifetime. Do we really think the issue this is just a one-off? No, it's a sort of trial balloon to see how it goes.
That's probably got lost in the debate a bit, how they've seized an opportunity in Milan, the fact they can't play a game there to take it overseas. But of course, once you've crossed the threshold, once you've taken games overseas like that for the first time, then it does normalise it, so it makes it easier the next time. So are they using the cover of the Olympics to be able to do that? La Liga haven't managed to find that. Maybe they could have waited till 2030 or something and said, well, they need the stadium to build up to the World Cup then in 2030, so we're having to take the game to get the stadium ready for FIFA. Or maybe La Liga could say they're doing their bit to help the United States prepare for next year's Men's World Cup by taking Barcelona there to play Villarreal to test the stadium. Of course, it's going down particularly badly with Real Madrid as they take on La Liga, but it shows the focus is now building up really to that World Cup next year, and we now know when the draw will be.
Yeah, we do indeed. It's going to be on December the 5th. Now,
Who told us?
Well, who else would make such an announcement about the World Cup draw, which is taking place in Mexico, Canada, and what's the other country? Oh, the USA.
Yep, we learned all this in one of these, by now, unmissable Oval Office sessions with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And by his side, yet again, maybe the fourth or fifth time this year, the FIFA president Gianni Infantino announcing that the World Cup draw ceremony will be at the Kennedy Center, as we've known it in DC, but which they both referred to as perhaps soon to be the Trump Kennedy Center. So in the 3 months or so until the draw takes place, let's see if the name of the venue changes, and if it's perhaps the first breakout event at a renamed centre.
So much happens in a Trump news cycle. How have we got onto renaming the Kennedy Center? Because he's also put a lot of his own people on the board, hasn't he?
Well, he is the chairman of the board, isn't he? And I think the board of directors a Venn diagram of the board of directors of the Kennedy Center and his own entourage and cabinet might look a bit more like a circle.
Yeah, named after John F. Kennedy, of course. But the thing is, let's just even think back to those JFK days. Soccer was absolutely nowhere in the United States. Trump is certainly showing a big interest in it. He's giving it huge profile because in the United States, on a day-to-day basis, they won't be talking about the World Cup build-up in the same way as we've said often they would be in the United Kingdom. It would be a constant daily story. Every small element would be national news. But there, last Friday in the Oval Office, with the Club World Cup still there, the World Cup itself, and it's still in the Oval Office. It's huge promotion for the World Cup.
Yeah, FIFA are probably very pleased about that for that exact reason.
On December 5th of this year, the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw will take place at the Kennedy Center. Some people refer to it as the Trump Kennedy Center, but we're not prepared to do that quite yet, maybe in a week or so. But right here in Washington, D.C., it's a tremendous honor.
I still think when people look at it on a sort of broader scale, you know, this slightly bizarre situation where you have Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, standing next to Trump, talking about the World Cup draw where it's going to be, and at the same session, Trump is like talking about possibly sending troops into Chicago to deal with crime, and then he produces a picture of himself and Vladimir Putin and says, "Oh, I know somebody who would like to be at the World Cup next summer. Maybe it could happen." Very uncomfortable for Infantino, and it's just bizarre.
We did preempt this because when we saw Gianni Infantino at the IFAB meeting in Belfast in February, he did mention about the possibility of Russia's return to World Cup being used by FIFA, Donald Trump, as a way of bringing about some peace deal with Ukraine. Hadn't been fully on his mind, but we're preempting what Donald Trump brought up months later.
Talking of Vladimir Putin, there is a kind of precedent for this in that 8 years ago the draw was held inside the Kremlin compound, which didn't seem so unusual at the time, and Vladimir Putin attended that. Although then the World Cup in Russia seemed very much more like a state-backed project. It was very much an extension of government and state, whereas the 2026 World Cup was really bid for by the three soccer federations and has become more of a state and government project over time. I'm not sure it was entirely conceived as that back in the day.
FIFA will probably say, "Oh, you know, this access to Trump is so valuable." I don't think Infantino ever met Biden in the Oval Office, and was that a big issue? I don't know, but it does seem that Trump is calling the shots. Now, my understanding is a lot of preparation had already gone into having the draw in Las Vegas, and hotels had been booked, venues had been reserved. Some people say that there could be a considerable cost to cancelling those. Others say, well, actually, you know, the terms of those reservations allow that to happen. So, but is this basically saying FIFA saying we're going to do whatever Donald Trump wants?
I'm sure I said on the pod a few weeks ago, I've definitely been talking about it, saying that yes, Vegas has been floated as a World Cup draw venue, but surely it could end up in DC or wherever is most convenient for Donald Trump to get him there, because to get the head of state of the country that has most of the games is quite an endorsement of the competition, particularly when it's the draw. It's not the final itself. It's one of the procedural events, drawing out the names of the teams to place them in the groups.
Yeah, it's true. I've been to the last 4 World Cup draw ceremonies, and I'm trying to remember who was there from South Africa and the most senior officials from South Africa and Brazil. And 2009, it was a conference centre in Cape Town. And 2013, we were taken a long way out of Rio de Janeiro, going to a beach resort in the state of Salvador, which seemed to be a football decision, seemed to be a beneficial one for football officials. But this is appearing to be quite a politicised draw ceremony, given we can only imagine another 3 months of domestic politics in city politics in DC the way it is now, where we might be in 3 months' time.
Just remember what happened at the draw in Qatar for the World Cup in April 2022, when the Emir said, nobody wants to listen to our speeches, they are waiting for the draw. That was reflecting things that had been dragging on quite a bit and we hadn't reached the part of the draw yet.
Good memories, yeah. I know it is increasingly politicised. I think the first World Cup draw I went to was in 2001 ahead of the 2002 World Cup, and that was in Busan in South Korea, and there was certainly no state politicians involved in that. So, but I think we've seen it a bit. Perhaps in Russia that became a bit more politicised, and now we have, it's gone completely to the other extreme.
And something for Gianni Infantino to navigate, because when he was in the Oval Office, there were a load of questions on political issues that Donald Trump was facing, with him standing there on all sorts of issues of the day.
There's one woman on television last night. She had a badly busted up nose. A woman that would have never finished off it, but she was hit hard. It's not going to happen anymore. Not going to happen anymore. But then we're going to beautify the city. And Gianni, did you want to say something?
Yes, I have one more thing, because as you rightly say, with security and beautifying cities and the whole country, we want people to come and enjoy and have fun. And that's why this is not just the most iconic trophy in the world of sport, but we start on the 10th of September, the sale of tickets for the FIFA World Cup. And we have the first ticket here for the final.
Good. Oh, wow.
For you.
Oh, good.
That's cool.
Wow.
It's, of course, row 1, seed 1 is ticket number 4547. And it's for the final in New York, New Jersey. We brought as well this, which is the winner's trophy. It is the trophy that the winner of the FIFA World Cup wins. Only the FIFA presidents of countries, and then those who win can touch it, because it's for winners only. And since you are a winner, of course, you can as well touch it. It's pretty heavy. Yeah. It's the winner trophy. The last one who lifted that is Lionel Messi of Argentina. And here it is in the Oval Office in the White House.
Can I keep it?
For you? Well, you can. You're not giving it World Cup.
We're not giving it. That's serious.
It fits well.
That goes very well on the wall right over there. We'll put it right below the angels.
It fits well here, I think.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
You can keep it until we have to give it to the next winner.
That's fine. That's a beautiful piece of gold.
One thing that should be noted is that FIFA has very strict rules prohibiting government interference in sports and the independent management and decision-making of sports authorities. And so we're obviously good to see this being upheld at the FIFA level as well.
One of the most challenging parts of Gianni Infantino's job, that navigating political pressure when he's placed in those political scenarios. He wants to be there, but probably doesn't want to be associated with the messaging, but doesn't want to be dismissive, say, of Donald Trump when he's standing there saying something contentious as well. So often maybe standing slightly awkwardly with a bit of a grimace, not wanting to smile in any way. But certainly the political pressures that they're facing, particularly on the Middle East conflict. But it's been more something UEFA has had to grapple with recently, but also something it's taken on head first. Wanting to say something, but also stepping back and wanting to say that its messaging isn't necessarily directly related to Israel and Gaza as well.
Yeah, we had this UEFA suit between PSG field saying civilians. They also had refugee children from several countries, Gaza, I think Nigeria, the Congo, Ukraine, amongst others. So several conflicts to try and show that this was a sort of general message. I mean, I spoke to them afterwards. They said this wasn't political. This was humanitarian. This was common sense. But the impression most people got, and I think probably UEFA realised this would happen, that this was all about the conflict in the Middle East with Israel and Palestine and Gaza. And there were 2 Palestinian children who involved in the medal ceremony, but not children from other countries. So I think UEFA have taken a step here to sort of try and grapple with this issue, because there are strong feelings. But the Israeli FA president has only recently been appointed to the executive committee.
Yeah, in April, the Israel FA president Moshe Suarez was elected to the UEFA Exco, where he will sit around the table with the Paris Saint-Germain president Nasser Al-Khelaifi, who is a member of the Qatari government and very close to the Qatari emir. And any progress in peace between Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians will likely go through Doha and Qatar. So UEFA is in a very, very interesting position in this question. And also it has a game coming up in October in the World Cup qualifiers, Norway against Israel, where another new member of the UEFA Executive Committee, Lise Klaveness of Norway, announced in recent days that the Norway FA's profits from ticket sales from that game in Oslo will be donated to humanitarian aid work in Gaza.
And with Israel playing Italy, the Italian Coaches Association has called for Israel to be suspended from world football, something that UEFA is resisting at the moment. We hadn't really heard much from UEFA on the record about Israel since early 2024, when Thea Theodoridis, the General Secretary at the Congress in Paris, referenced how the Israel-Gaza war started differently to the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and how Israel was responding to the Hamas massacres on Israeli territory on October the 7th, 2023. And obviously since then we've seen Israel's response leading to tens of thousands of deaths, which has put this sharp spotlight on whether sporting sanctions should be used to apply some sort of pressure on Israel. But we haven't heard much from UEFA until the UEFA president Alexander Šefčovič spoke to Slovenian media this month and said there is a legitimate question to be had. In principle, he's not an advocate of not allowing athletes to compete in competitions, but he said it's very difficult to comment on what could happen, but in principle, all athletes should have the opportunity to compete. Yeah, he's avoiding directly commenting on Israel's participation, because at the moment there aren't teams international level refusing to play Israel, unlike we saw in 2022 when we had European teams said they would not play against Russia.
Not happened so far, and that would become then a really big issue for FIFA and UEFA if we had not just national teams, but if clubs say that they don't want to play Israeli sides or national teams don't want to play Israel, that becomes a really big challenge for the football authorities.
And those on the Israeli side who question some of the activism around stop killing civilians, stop killing children, they say there should be a return the hostages messages as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously one of these issues that creates huge divides, so no one is going to be happy, and not everyone is going to be happy with this for sure.
Well, we'll see what sort of messaging is around when the Champions League begins in the coming weeks as well, and that UEFA broader messaging against the conflicts. One of Sepp Blatter's last meetings actually as FIFA president in 2015 was with the Palestinian FA in Zurich, and he was suspended days later, and that was the end of his reign at FIFA. And we might often think he's distant history, but we have had to bring up Sepp Blatter quite a bit in the last year. And we now have yet another development on this decade-long case over that payment to Michel Platini, who was then UEFA president at the time in 2015, before they were all toppled. Is this now the end of the matter?
Well, I think I may have just written my last words on the subject that has probably occupied more writing time, more words than any other story in my career and in our careers as well. 10 years after Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini were put under suspicion and investigation for this 2 million Swiss francs payment. Today, this week, the Swiss Attorney General's office has said, finally, no, they will not appeal against the second round of acquittals for Blatter and Platini, which was handed down by a court near Basel in March. So 5 months later, they've said, no, we're not going to appeal. They could have taken it to a federal appeal court. And I think we can probably say this is the end of this legal case, and in this instance, the names of Blatter and Platini are entirely cleared and exonerated. We think it's over.
Yeah, I think reputationally, there obviously still going to be some challenges.
Because they did serve their bans from FIFA.
Yes, exactly. So they were banned from football, but just not they were cleared of any criminality.
And FIFA certainly believe they uncovered in this Gianni Infantino era a lot of huge payments that they were all agreeing amongst themselves, big bonuses for World Cups that they say that they do nothing like that now.
Yeah, there was no transparency under the Blatter regime about those bonuses. That only came to light afterwards.
So, is that the last word on this case? We'll wait to see. During the week, the European draws, and something very different this year, no Manchester United for the first time since 2014. Because, of course, back then, David Moyes failed to qualify for Europe as Sir Alex Ferguson's successor. But at least for United in some of those subsequent years, they have been in European competitions, winning the Europa League even. Lost the Europa League final last season to Tottenham Hotspur. That was their only route back into Europe this season. Of course, their miserable bottom half of the table finish. So no Manchester United presence at the European draws this week. Kept more Manchester United misery domestically.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone will know how they lost to Grimsby Town from League Two in a penalty shootout in the Carabao Cup. Now, you're right. You know, it's not every season since 2014 that they've been in the Champions League. A lot of the time they were in the Europa League, but that still had financial benefits. Not so you could still get sort of 25 million plus prize money from there, but significantly you had those matches at Old Trafford, which brought in a lot of cash. Not being in Europe this season, it's going to be at least 80 million drop in income for Manchester United. So there's the not having any TV or prize money from UEFA, not having the gate receipts, and also there's a £10 million penalty clause with Adidas. And actually, going out to the Carabao Cup, the sort of League Cup, the third domestic competition, although it's not the biggest tournament, it is quite significant, again, financially, because there are games at Old Trafford that are now not going to have. And that's you're talking like £2 million possibly in gate receipts for those matches.
And maybe some will say it's premature. Some are already, say, writing them out of a Premier League title race and saying we're in August still, and the only competition they can win is the FA Cup, which of course they enter the third round in January.
Just to clarify, there was one personality from the Manchester United world in Monaco, and that's Jean-Claude Blanc, who was on the board of directors recently and is sort of the advisor to the club in his role as Ineos. He's part of business meetings on the sort of the commercial management of the Champions League and all the UEFA's club competitions through this joint venture that the increasingly influential European Club Association has with UEFA. So although Manchester United are not here, their man, Monsieur Blanc, is still helping shape the future of the Champions League.
Shaping the future of competitions Manchester United aren't in. And to put a bit of perspective on that Manchester United defeat, one of the biggest shocks in Manchester United's history, courtesy of the great Kieran Maguire, the football finance expert. Manchester United's recent revenue, £661.8 million. Grimsby's, £7.5 million. Grimsby's wages, £4 million. Man United's annual wages, £365 million. So, some of the beauty of football, the fact they can still beat United 2-0 up. Came back to 2-2, but won a penalty shootout.
Yeah, I mean, it does show why football is such a sort of popular competition globally, because those sorts of crazy results don't really happen that often in other sports, but they do quite. Football does throw these up. It's been great to have Graham Dunbar from the Associated Press giving us his insight, and we will surely be having you back on again, Graham.
Because we know you're always listening.
Always listening. Big fan and friend of the pod. Thanks very much for the guest appearance.
And as ever, thank you to everyone for listening. You can message us at Sport Unlocked on all the social media platforms, sportunlockedpod@gmail.com. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.